Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, yesterday I did, in fact, get a chance to play in that Hollow Earth Expedition one-shot run by RuneSlinger, and I was joined by Dark Age of Roleplay Games by Jason, and it was a freaking hoot. It was a lot of fun. We played for a little over 2 hours. It's on RuneSlinger's channel. I will try to remember to link the video below, but it was called All That Glitters. And just a fun time. And this video is not going to be about me gushing about Hollow Earth Expedition, mostly. But it's funny. It's the first game using Ubiquity. It's the one I did not buy, but it's the one I'm probably most interested in running. That and maybe like Leagues of Gothic Horror. So it's on my list, and they have. I think you can probably spend like about 120, 130 bucks, and from Exile Games, and buy the whole set because there's some expansions for it, and they all are just like each one is cooler than the last. But the core book is like 20 bucks. But anyhow. That's enough advertisement. But it was funny. It's like pulp. It's 1937-ish. It's a Hollow Earth. It's Nazis. It can be all kinds of good stuff, and there's all kinds of other stuff going on. But it is part of my homework was just like go watch Raiders of the Lost Ark again, and I did, and I forgot like how fast-paced and frenetic that movie was. It's been a while since I've really watched anything pulpy. And the other part of my homework was to watch Treasure of the Sierra Madre. And we were going to play guys like, Anthony came straight out and said, think of playing some smugglers, or people like Indiana Jones or Belloc from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Treasure of the Sierra Madre, which I'd never actually seen. These are kind of darker characters, but it kind of exploring this like really kind of seedy side of humanity with some good people and some really not so nice people. In the characters in that movie, and so we got to play characters like that in this game. And this video is really going to be talking about the learning curve, not just for Ubiquity, but any games, and just kind of how interesting it is to watch somebody else on a different point on the learning curve in some areas, and just smiling a little bit, seeing where they're having the same experience that I was. Because we talked after the game a little bit about impressions and part of the learning curve. That goes into learning this game, but I think into a lot of other games. Especially though, I think Jason and I have this shared experience where we both grew up with the same type of games. We both played mostly, OSR games, and now we're trying different games. We're both trying Ubiquity. Both of our first experience like with a die pool system, actually playing one, and so. There's a lot of stuff, where our experience has been similar. So a lot of our, hurdles we're overcoming are a little similar. Anyhow, now that I flipped completely to that subject, I want to go back for 1 second, just talk a little bit more about, just Hollow Earth and this whole like dark side stuff that I really enjoyed playing these characters that were not, they weren't terrible people, but they were a little bit. You'll have to watch it because it's fascinating. But our characters were, a little bit conniving. At least mine was. And that's why he was sitting there doing all the smuggling and trying to get artifacts and gold and all that kind of good junk. It made me think of some of the other games that I have not tried yet, but like things that RuneSlinger's hot on, like Edge of the Empire, and that's one of those games where you can choose in that Fantasy Flight Star Wars, I believe is the company that's doing that. You can choose to do something like Force and Destiny, where you're playing Jedis, or you can you play something like I think it's Rebellion and Empire, where you're going to be parts of the rebellion, or you can be these really interesting people like the people in Mos Eisley, wretched hive of scum and villainy. You can be Landos and Han Solos and all those really interesting people, and those kind of characters really kind of appeal to me. So that was really neat to play people like that in Hollow Earth. And even games like, I've never played the Firefly game. I'm not sure if I would, but I love the show, and I like that kind of vibe. And I can see how Hollow Earth Expedition can provide you with just like a campaign. I like that really frenetic. It was almost like at one point it was almost like a hex crawl. But anyhow, you can go off in a bunch of different directions, and so now I'm kind of gushing and rambling. But anyhow. What I really want to talk about, is this kind of learning curve that I watched Jason sort of go through, and we were talking afterwards, and I realized it's more than one. It's got more than one facet. There's a few different domains. For me, part of it was just like learning the system, like a brand new system. And all of us probably have had that experience where we played one game, we've learned a new one, and it takes a while to really wrap your head around how all the parts of this new system work. What's even more challenging, or makes the learning curve a little bit more steep, is the fact that the system runs very differently from the one you're used to. In this case, we're going from like D20 OSR type games to a very different way of playing the game in a lot of different ways. Then there's the character creation learning curve, and I felt like a bad friend because his character did not suck by any means, but he was kind of a three-trick pony. He had put all of his skills into a few different areas, his skill points, and I created a character who was a lot more of a, he was literally a jack of all trades. Like that was the talent I took because I knew it might come in useful in this particular scenario that we were getting into. We didn't know too much about it, so that it helps to be a jack of all trades. I probably should have provided him a little bit of feedback about his character and said, hey, you may want to, these are some of the obstacles you may run into with this narrow of a skill set. You might want to consider, like, having a couple other little satellite skills around this that which you're kind of good at. But that's another hurdle to go through. And I was just telling him today, one of the things that really helped me with that and Ubiquity was making a bunch of pre-gens for a one-shot and making character after character and figuring out like a concept for each one of them and kind of exploring different talents and whatnot. And it got faster and faster. It didn't take that long. But I think I'll do another video about like building my Ubiquity character I used, about building Spencer Halliday, and just about like kind of building Ubiquity characters in general, because it's really cool and fun. Anyhow, here I am advertising again. The next part of the learning curve, though, regardless of the game, is system application. It's one thing to kind of read it, wrap your head around the how the game works. It's another thing to kind of go through the nuances of character creation. But then it's like applying it in the moment. And that's a learning curve. Like I watched him just like kind of hesitate here and there, which is like, that's not a criticism. Like we all do that when you learn a new game. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to ask questions. But that can make the learning curve a little bit steeper. And let's see, using some kind of in-game currency like style. That, to me, I mean, I really like the style mechanic, and I did not think I would like that at all. That's one of the things about Ubiquity I thought I was going to hate. I really enjoy it, but in the heat of the moment, when you go on autopilot as a role player, as a gamer, any kind of in-game currency, I don't care, what it is, what the game uses, it's easy to kind of like forget about that because you go on autopilot. You know what you're doing. You know how to role play. You know how to game to a certain extent. You know how to use whatever mechanic, the basic core mechanics, but you forget about that little satellite thing, like the style points. It can be easy to forget to give them as a game master. It can be easy to forget to use them as a player, and figure out what you should do in order to earn more of them. So that's another part of the learning curve that I saw having a moment with here and there, and I still do. It's definitely something I haven't kind caught up to speed on. As far as narration goes, Jason is like light years ahead of me. We had to talk, and he is did have some acting experience more than I did, and he is just really good at that. Like I enjoyed, he's a very enjoyable person to play with. We laughed a lot. We really got into characters. I didn't do so bad, but he's a natch as far as the narration, and really kind of being very colorful and very descriptive with his character's actions. But there's other part of that learning curve where you kind of get into this, figure out like, where am I going to place my description and everything. And Anthony and I are, no surprise, are really fond of that whole thing where you state your intention, you roll dice, and then you narrate what happens. And so I can see like that's a bit of a learning curve too. Like when you're going from a game that really doesn't support narration, OSR D&D does not say you can't do it, but it doesn't necessarily say you should, and it doesn't have mechanics or built-in things to support that and say this is what it's expected of you. In Ubiquity, it's not exactly expected, but it's kind of implied, and a lot of the mechanics support that. So it can be a little bit confusing to figure out, like, when do I do this? When do I cut the scene? When do I roll the dice? When do I wait? So the bottom line is, it's not just one learning curve. I'm counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 if I thought of a little bit more. Learning curves that are going on all at the same time. So that's kind of what we were talking about last night. Is it does take time in any game. And it's funny. Jason is like a guy that's plugged into a 220 socket, and I have to laugh, with him, not at him, as he's going out and checking out all these different systems and gushing about this and that. Because I certainly have some games on my shelf that I really got excited about, and I'm still excited about. I still intend to play, but for me, I'm kind of this. I'm more of an analytical guy. I don't know if you caught on to that, but I really like to dive deep into one system or whatever I do in life and really learn all the ins and outs of it. And it's funny, the other games that I have picked up, for the most part, they are much simpler than Ubiquity, and Ubiquity is not complex. So if you look at like something like Broken Rums or Circle of Hands, they're not as complicated. So they're games that I read, I understood. I'm like, this is really cool. I want to play this game, but I'm going to kind of put it on the shelf until I find the right people, because those games require the right people. And also, I really want to develop some system mastery with this particular system. fortunately, so far, I've really been enjoying the heck out of it. And I've really also been enjoying, connecting with people and playing with them online. I really wish we could get us all sitting down at the same table, but we are, Jason's in Colorado, Anthony's in Korea, I'm here in Connecticut. It would be nice to find some gamers. I'm still on the search for a group of gamers, locally that I can have the same kind of fun with. And of course, I got my friends in Canada as well. And I game with, Saving France. So anyhow, it's a little bit rambling and going all over the place, but I just want to talk a little bit about that learning curve. And how it's not just one learning curve. You can really start to dissect it as you play a new game. And there's really all kinds of different things you have to kind of learn and unlearn all at the same time. That's really something I thought about until last night as we were chatting afterwards. So that's it. That's my real analytical thoughts for today. Have a good one.